There are few words in the human language that carry as much weight, as much fear, and as much mystery as the word cancer. It is a word whispered in hospital hallways, printed in clinical reports, and feared across every culture, every class, every continent. But what if understanding this word, its origin, its evolution, its meaning, could change how we see the disease itself? Tonight, on Cancer Decoded, we go deeper than biology, deeper than medicine. We go into language, because the story of cancer begins not in a lab, but in a word. The word cancer traces back over 2,000 years to ancient Greece. The Greek physician Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, used the term karkinos. Karkinos meaning crab. But why a crab? Hippocrates observed tumors with swollen veins spreading outward, gripping surrounding tissue. To him, they resembled a crab's body, with legs extending in all directions, a central mass with invasive arms. This was not poetic language. It was clinical observation translated through metaphor. Later, the Roman physician Celsus translated karkinos into Latin. The word he chose? Cancer, again meaning crab. And so, from ancient Greece to imperial Rome, the metaphor endured. A disease named not for what it is, but for what it looks like. Before microscopes, before molecular biology, before oncology existed as a discipline, language was medicine's primary tool. Physicians described disease not by cellular mechanisms, but by analogy. Tumors were hard like stones, or spreading like roots, or clinging like crabs. The word cancer was never meant to explain the disease. It was meant to describe its behavior, its persistence, its grip. And in many ways, that metaphor still shapes how we think about cancer today. As centuries passed, medicine evolved, but the word remained. During the Renaissance, physicians began dissecting the human body in detail. They observed tumors more closely, yet still they called them cancer. By the 19th century, with the invention of the microscope, scientists discovered something revolutionary. Cancer was not just a mass. It was a cellular process. Cells dividing uncontrollably, invading neighboring tissue, spreading through the body. And yet, even with this profound shift in understanding, the ancient word endured, because language, once established, is remarkably difficult to change. The metaphor of the crab is more than historical curiosity. It reflects something deeper about how humans understand disease. We don't just define illness scientifically, we define it symbolically. The crab represents persistence, invasion, tenacity, and perhaps most importantly, something that is difficult to remove once it has taken hold. This metaphor has shaped not only medical language, but patient psychology. To be diagnosed with cancer is not just to receive a clinical label. It is to inherit centuries of fear, imagery, and meaning. While the Greek and Latin roots dominate Western medicine, other cultures developed their own linguistic frameworks. In traditional Chinese medicine, cancer was often described in terms of stagnation, imbalance, or toxic accumulation. In Arabic medical texts of the medieval period, scholars adopted and expanded upon Greek terminology. Across cultures, the disease was recognized, but the language used to describe it varied. And with that variation came different interpretations, different treatments, different philosophies, which raises an important question. Does the language we use shape the medicine we practice? The field of oncology, the study of cancer, emerged in the modern era. Interestingly, the word oncology comes from the Greek onkos, meaning mass or burden. So even as science advanced, the language remained rooted in ancient observation. Today, oncology is one of the most complex and rapidly evolving fields in medicine. A word born from a crab. We understand cancer observed over 2 millennia ago. We map patients. The word cancer we design targeted therapy carries emotional weight, fear, uncertainty, mortality, Studies have shown that the language used in diagnosis can significantly impact patient outcomes. Words influence perception. Perception influences behavior. Behavior influences health. When a doctor says, "cancer," they are not just describing a disease. They are invoking a narrative, a story that has been told for centuries. In modern medicine, there is a push toward precision. We no longer speak of cancer as a single entity. We speak of breast cancer, lung cancer, glioblastoma, leukemia, each with its own biology, its own behavior, its own treatment. Some scientists argue that the term cancer itself is too broad, too imprecise, too burdened with historical meaning. But changing it would mean rewriting centuries of medical language, and perhaps changing how humanity understands one of its most feared diseases. As medicine advances, we may reach a point where cancer is no longer a single diagnosis, but a spectrum of highly specific conditions, identified by genetic markers, treated with personalized therapies, managed with precision tools. In that future, will we still use the word cancer? Or will it become a relic, a linguistic fossil from a time before we truly understood the disease? The story of cancer is not just biological. It is linguistic, cultural, philosophical. It reminds us that medicine is not practiced in a vacuum. It is shaped by language, by metaphor, by history. The word cancer began as a description, a way to make sense of the unknown. And even now, as science uncovers its deepest secrets, we are still, in some ways, interpreting the disease through the lens of that ancient metaphor. Welcome to Cancer Decoded, where we go beyond headlines, beyond myths, and beyond fear to explore cancer through science, history, and critical thinking. If you're ready to understand, not just react, subscribe, because the more we decode, the less we fear. A single word, born in ancient Greece, still defines one of the most complex diseases known to humanity. Not because it is perfect, but because it endured. And perhaps, understanding that word is the first step in understanding the disease itself.